Welcome everyone to the Smart Water Wednesdays webinar. Today we will be discussing WeatherTRAK usage reports. And I've got a very special guest with me, my friend Scott Smallen from Watersavers and in San Rafael, California. He is a WeatherTRAK brand manager for distribution branch up there in Northern California. Say hi, Scott.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you.
And so we are going to go over some usage reports. One of the things that I think makes WeatherTRAK a unique value proposition, something that we do better than any technology in the marketplace, is our reporting. And I think no better evidence of that than in these usage reports. We see a lot of very detailed information, stuff that you can't find anywhere else, that really does help water managers. So we'll drill into the details of all of the different usage reports and all the different ways that we can see that usage. Let's go back to the screen and drill into that a little bit. Okay, so here we go. How do we measure our water usage with WeatherTRAK, right? That's what we're gonna talk about. These are all of the different reports where you can see the usage in different shapes and forms, right? We'll talk about runtime usage. And when we talk about runtime, it is a measurement on the controller that has nothing to do with gallons. This is the classic irrigation measurement, right? You ask any irrigation guy how much water he put down on a station, he will tell you in runtime minutes. And so that is kind of where we start. It is the least glamorous way of doing it, but definitely something that is the most common way of tracking it in the industry, tracking that usage. Then we'll jump into measured usage. This is how, using a flow sensor, how much or how many gallons you've actually used. And we'll drill into kind of how WeatherTRAK tracks all of that. We'll get into estimated usage. This is something that you can do without a flow sensor, but it provides a very high level of what I like to call water nerdness. We can really drill down on a lot of details in a water nerd fashion that reveal a lot about how water is being used out on site. And then, of course, our top offering, OptiFlow, we'll talk about how OptiFlow reports water usage and the difference that that can make for you. So let's jump right in. First and foremost, the most simple report. Single controller runtime history report. This is actually my yard that you're looking at here. And with all WeatherTRAK reports, we believe that what you're trying to do with a report is have a conversation, right? You're trying to convey to either a customer or a contractor or somebody out there what's going on with their site. So the first thing we always do is put it in, or put the information contained in the report in some sort of digestible format. In this case, we see this bar graph that shows our day-by-day usage. The little blue line that runs through this report is our ET. So you can see exactly what the ET was and the corresponding day-by-day runtime history. Now, one of the things that I think is a sticking point, something that is a common question, is how is this pulled? WeatherTRAK, this is a midnight to midnight report. So it starts at 12 a.m. and finishes at 12 a.m. and many people have irrigation water windows that pass that midnight mark. And so that will be reported on 2 separate days, something that you should know going in. And so that's just a heads up. Now, after you've had the visual, the easy to talk about component, sometimes the devil is in the details, as they say. And so with all WeatherTRAK reports, the next thing we do is give you all of the information, all of the data that it takes to create that conversation piece. In this case, station by station runtimes. You can track what stations watered and when, and this is really by far one of the most common reports that I see get used. Scott, can you tell me how you or your guys use this report in the field?
Yeah, I can. I'll share a personal experience with the single controller runtime report for me. And I have an LC controller at my house. And I've programmed it, dialed it all in. So I manage the water at our house, but my wife, she gets the water bills, and she goes over the water bills with a fine-tooth comb, and she'll ask me, "Hey, was the controller running last night? I heard it on in the middle of the night," or was it supposed to be on, and what station was running last night? Those were actual conversations I was having. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to generate a daily runtime report, and I subscribed her to it, so it gets emailed to her, and I don't get those questions anymore. And I thought, well, she's not gonna look at them, but she goes in and she looks at them, and it just makes her feel more comfortable. Where especially that first graph that you showed, where you can see the runtime, and then you can have the overlay of the weather, so you're seeing the controller adjust to weather circumstances. So that gives her visibility into that, where she sees not only does the runtime go up when the ET goes up, okay, our plant material is protected, that's good, but when she sees the ET go down, when the weather goes down, the controller will drastically reduce minutes. So that makes her feel good, makes me feel good. That's just a personal way I've used that report, and my customers have used it the same way, where the person managing the water can build that trust and have good conversations with a person who is managing the water bills. And then that other part of the report, being able to see the runtime by valve, is also really valuable for looking at an anomaly on a specific valve. Is the runtime higher than I expected? Is it lower? But then also on that report, you can see the alerts. So many times that anomaly in runtime is going to be associated with an alert, and I can see it all right there on that report, what that associated alert may be. So it's just a nice way to get started into looking at what my controller is doing, having that visibility, and it's a nice place to start too for troubleshooting if I see something that looks out of whack. Yeah, so there you can see the different runtimes by valve, the associated ET for that day on the far left, and then any alerts that are associated with that runtime. So it's super useful.
Yeah, alerts and pauses, I get both of those being used. This is, in fact, like episode 27, I think, Scott, and the first time we have got marital advice on how to use WeatherTRAK to improve communication between couples. So thank you for that.
Episode 27, bookmark it.
And I agree. So the one thing that I highlight on both this and the measured usage report is this ET information. This is one of the most common questions that I get. Does WeatherTRAK store and deliver historical weather information for my controller? And yes, by all means, day by day ET here. And let's go and look at this online. One thing I wanted to talk about is how we create these reports, just procedurally. So in this case, we would go to the weathertrak.net. We would go to the reports page, use the drop-down menu to select the single controller runtime history report. And what I wanted to talk about, two things. First of all, with every report, you'll customize that report, right? And in this case, I always customize my reports to deliver the results in gallons. You can always see that in cubic feet or K gallons. Definitely make sure it matches your water bill if that's what you're doing. I like it in gallons because that makes the most sense to me. And then one thing that Scott talked about as important to him was this subscribe button. As with every WeatherTRAK report, once you find one that you like, you can subscribe to it or set that report up to automatically generate and be delivered to your inbox at the time of your choosing. So I think that's definitely a valuable feature, something that can streamline the management. You don't have to log in to get the information that you need to make the management call. So some great customization features on that report, and we'll talk about that in other reports as well. So let's move. Oh, let's move on here. Get back to the PowerPoint. So this was the single controller runtime history. We will move on to the multi-controller runtime history report. With a lot of my customers, and I'm sure with a lot of Scott's, we are managing a portfolio of WeatherTRAK controllers, not just a single controller. So sometimes the questions are, which of my controllers is running most, right? We can see which controller irrigates the most. And again, we provide that in the visual method here first, and then drop the details into what you're looking at. Now, with this report, it is just a summary. We're not giving you station by station analysis. This is one controller at a time. It's also important to know with both of these reports, both the single controller runtime history and the multi-controller runtime history, that we are only looking at the scheduled irrigation. So it's not manual irrigation displayed in this location. We can find that other places, but these reports only show scheduled irrigation from midnight to midnight. And this report is valuable because we can compare and contrast what different controllers or sites are doing in terms of runtime. Scott, make sense?
It does. It's nice being able to have that visual comparison and get a nice 10,000 foot level at my site. Here's all my controllers and here's what they're doing. Like you said, in comparison to each other, I have a visual cue for how that works. So it's a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I would highlight about this, if I go back to my screen here, what I did was, this one I decided to customize a little differently. I went in here and I have my multi-controller runtime report. Let's see, no, that's the runtime history. So this guy, I separated all of my controller by controller usage out by program. So I can see the difference between what program A is doing and what program B is doing. A lot of contractors put all of their turf on program A and all of their drip on program D. And this is a great way to just quickly see at a glance the differences in how sites are being managed. One of the customization options available on this multi-controller runtime report. The standard feature shows you a breakdown of those stations and divided up between auto mode and user mode. So you can see how much of the water goes to the weather-based irrigation and how much is outside of that, which is a valuable comparison. You can see it on my standard demo, the Meadowview HOA, it's about 50-50. This guy up here is an OptiFlow demo, so I have them all in user mode, so it works better for demoing OptiFlow. But you can see how much of your schedule is being driven by the conservation of automated by WeatherTRAK and how much of your usage is being driven by user-defined programs or those programs that your contractor set the days and minutes for.
I found that report to be really useful for like municipalities, for school districts, cities, where they have multiple contractors managing a bunch of different controllers and being able to see, we want to see as much green as we can where things are in auto mode. And there you're able to see what's, which controllers are going to be in the setting that's going to save me the most water.
Yeah, very quickly, right? You can just look at all of your controllers and like that, know which ones you need to call and talk to your contractors about. Absolutely. I think that that is how I most see that report used for sure. All right, so enough about the runtime reports. Let's move on to the measured usage history reports. And those guys are definitely require a flow sensor. So we have to be measuring the usage. Now, again, that a flow sensor is not does not come with the WeatherTRAK controller. It is something that you have to add on. If you have a flow sensor on your system, we're measuring the gallons as you're using them, and we can apply some knowledge about how you're using those gallons out in the field. Now, this is, again, my controller at my house. Scott, you can see on here when it snowed in Denver back here.
For sure.
One thing I do like to highlight is the different types of usage that this measured usage reports, right? This is where we start to see the difference between scheduled irrigation and manual irrigation. These little purples at the bottom of these graphs are when I went out with WeatherTRAK mobile and threw some extra water down on my gardens or whatever it was. So scheduled usage is that comes from the controller, right? Comes from the schedule. Doesn't matter whether it's auto mode or user mode, that is part of your irrigation schedule. Purple is manual irrigation. So whether you're pushing buttons at the controller or sending that signal from WeatherTRAK mobile or WeatherTRAK.net, anytime it's manual irrigation, it's tracked in purple. And then this other usage category is a very telling one. Other usage is usage that was measured by the flow sensor, but the controller wasn't on at the time, right? So they're gallons that WeatherTRAK has no idea what was happening or why, but we know that we measured those gallons, something that not all technologies are even capable of, honestly, and is a very telling fact about the state of your irrigation system. Scott, do you use this measured usage report?
Yeah, and again, it's combining the ET with the measured usage of gallons, but also the color coding of the type of irrigation it was, or the type of flow that it was. So like you said, green is good, and I don't usually have anything to worry about. But if I see a bunch of purple and it wasn't me turning it on, well, then that's something I can investigate more. Or if I see red, why is there flow going through there that the controller's not operating on? So maybe it's quick couplers and my crew is out there and they're using those. But it's a quick way for me to see, do I have an issue? Do I need to investigate a little bit more? And it's a quick way to get that information in a really visually appealing way.
Yeah, so absolutely. The red can indicate a number of things. It can indicate, if you have a normally open master valve, it can indicate a leak on the system, right? That low level usage that can be happening at any time. If you build it in, if you use the master valve override, I teach a lot of my guys to, if they have battery operated valves that they inherit in the field when they switch to WeatherTRAK, as a temporary solution to make it work while you get wires to those valves, I teach them to use the master valve override feature, open up the master valve for those battery operated valves to run inside of. And you have to do that during non-irrigation hours. And so all that's tracked as other usage, right? Or the most common thing we see is contractors opening up that master valve and then going out into the valve boxes and turning on stations. And that's other usage as well. And to Scott's earlier point, as we look at these reports with our customers, a lot of our customers are driving at get these controllers on ET, right? Get these weather-based irrigation schedules taking over. And I have my customers using these reports because the contractors will see the auto mode not keeping up. So we'll see huge amounts of manual irrigation instead of tweaking the auto mode settings to make the information in the program match the information in the field. They manage the deficit by going out and applying manual irrigation, which sometimes is very, very excessive, right? So we see a ton of runtime. They get one dry spot and they put 30 minutes on every station. And it's a great way to track usage in that way as well. All right, so let's go to multi-controller measured usage reports. Go this way. Okay, so this is a big report. Again, the same concept. One of the beautiful things about WeatherTRAK is the ability to compare and contrast. That's what water managers like to do. Hey, I want to see how much one park is using compared to the other, or one controller is using to the other. So we just have that at our fingertips. We can see which controllers use the most water, and again, break down the type of usage on those different sites. Do you use this one at all, Scott?
Yeah, for the larger sites, and you want an overview of what's going on, and I want to see green, or if I don't see green, well then from a large overview, I can see there's a controller I need to talk about. What's happening at that controller that makes it different from the others, where we're doing more manual irrigation there, or that there's more flow through there than we're expecting. So it helps me sift through all of those controllers really quickly and zero in on one where I may have an issue, or I need to have more conversation with my irrigation tech or with the water manager.
Right, those sites, which site has the most manual irrigation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of red flags that we're looking for to highlight that usage. And you can see the second part of it. I didn't show you. I didn't fly it in, but if you look at it here, you can see all of the different usage reports. So for this controller, you can see how much usage went to scheduled irrigation, how much usage went to manual irrigation, and then how much usage was other usage outside of the watering window, not tracked by WeatherTRAK, or not designed by WeatherTRAK at least. So that is good. We got a question, Tony Monzone. I think I answered that question about your how does it track. Can we run controller setting to see for the whole portfolio of controllers to review controller runtime? The multi controller runtime report will do that for you. Absolutely. Let us go back to our screen share and move right along here. Next, we want to talk about controller estimated usage. Now, estimated usage is different than measured usage. Estimated usage actually has no measurement involved at all, other than maybe the learned flow test. Let me explain. So to create a station's estimated usage, WeatherTRAK will take the flow value for that station and multiply it by the runtime for that station. So it's what WeatherTRAK thinks that station used. Now, the reason for this is measuring irrigation with a flow sensor. In a dynamic system, it's very hard to cleanly attribute all of the gallons to one station or another, right? That is to say that when we're measuring flow and station 1 is supposed to be turning off and station 2 is supposed to be turning on, we see a huge spike in the flow in between those two stations, and maybe station 1 is slow to close, maybe station 2 is slow to open. We don't really know exactly how to divide those gallons up. And so we don't have a clean measured usage for each individual station in reporting form. But what we can do is very cleanly estimate that, right? We can multiply runtimes by flow rates and have an estimated flow rate, estimated usage for every station individually. And what we can do with that is just awesome. Like, I love this report because right here at my fingertips, we have a lot of the information that we talked about, right? How many of my stations are running in user mode versus auto mode, right? How well am I using the weather-based irrigation schedule on this controller? And let's see, if I go to the actual report, I can highlight it much better. Let's go over here to the estimated usage report and blow this guy up so people can see it at home. There we go. So you can see what your average gallons were. You can see the difference between user mode and auto mode. And we can break down how that water is being used out on site. How much of the water went to cool season turf. Water distribution by plant type shows me how I'm using that water on different plants. Water distribution by sprinkler type shows me by sprinkler type. Scott, do you have guys that use this?
Absolutely. This is the report that I see water managers' eyes light up when they first see it, especially the 2 pie graphs down at the bottom, because you're seeing water distribution in a way where you don't normally see it presented to you this way, and it's super useful. So for instance, on the left, by plant, I can see that most of my water, 57, 58% of my water is going towards cool turf versus warm turf. So this really helps water managers have good conversations with, maybe it's an HOA board and you're going into an HOA meeting and you want to talk about how is our water being used? Which plants are using the most water? And if you're planning perhaps to do a rehab of turf, you're going to take some of the turf out, you're going to put in more drought tolerant plant material, you're able to look at a percentage of how much of your water is going to be affected by that. Where am I going to be able to capture savings? Not theoretically, but I'm going to actually see a percentage of water savings here. And when you overlay this with how much of your water bill is and what you're paying for your water, now you're really having a conversation about this is how much water we're going to save by switching away from turf or by removing or switching this area to trees.
Right.
The same thing is true. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just build on that and say that true water management isn't just putting the controller in and hoping that it works, right? True water management is a full-scale set of offerings that include smart control, but also include things like high-efficient heads, reduction of turf. Like there's a lot of different strategies, and this type of report can allow you to put pen to paper and figure out a return on investment in different water management projects for your customer, right? So if I go in here and see how much of my water is going to my spray heads, I can put pencil to paper and figure out, hey, if I upgrade those to high efficiency sprays, what is my return on investment on a project like that?
Yeah, it's just a great place to have that conversation. And I encourage my contractors or my customers to, before they have an HOA meeting or before they're having a meeting with their landscape board, is to print these out, have them ready, or even when you create that report, email it to them. So now you're having a really relevant conversation, and makes that meeting so much better when everybody's looking at what's actually going on there and where might there be more opportunities to be even more efficient. Like you said, that's what the pie graph on the right does. How much is just overhead spray? Well, man, maybe there's some savings I could capture if I went to high efficiency nozzles on that 15% of my water distribution.
Right. And then if we scroll to the second page, again, we give you the details. And in this case, the details do make a difference, right? I can go through and see station by station what that estimated usage is by station and say, here, this station 3 is, or station 5 here is using 5 times the amount that the other stations are using. What is it about that station that makes it need so much more water? And then really create a strategic water reduction plan based on the highest offenders, right? The highest water users out on that site. So that is a water nerd dream come true, I think. Let's see. I've got a question. Can we see who overwrites the schedule for a controller? Absolutely. That is a conversation for a different day, but that happens on the controller settings change history report that puts the fingerprint on who made what change and when. All right, we'll keep going. Back to the PowerPoint here. All right. And we are to our OptiFlow report, and I'm not going to drill too detailed away down on this one because this one can get super water nerdy very fast. I have to admit, this is my favorite of the usage reports because what you're seeing here is the way that OptiFlow sees measured usage. And so on this graph here, you see a blue line that is actually OptiFlow's ability to deliver a minute by minute measured usage value, track that and log it into the system. So we're seeing minute by minute through the entire day, really from the entire irrigation day, how water is flowing through the system. And then the green that you see here is during scheduled irrigation, what the calculated high limit should be and what the calculated low limit should be. So if we go in here, you can see that with this station running, here was my low flow threshold, here was my high flow threshold, and this is what I measured all the way through the night. And so as we scroll through the report, we can actually see where that doesn't line up. We can go in here and see, here's what I expected it to do. Flow value dropped to 0. I've got a no flow. I've got this valve that didn't open up, right? Controller D on building E along the fence was supposed to be irrigating at 46 gallons a minute, and we saw nothing. So it highlights that that created an alert. Just next level of usage reporting out of OptiFlow that I really enjoy. Scott, do you use the Mainline usage report?
And the customers that really appreciate that, sometimes it's not enough to know how many minutes it ran last night, but what was running when last night, because that's going to help solving a hydraulic issue, or what else was on when that valve was on. And boy, that can make troubleshooting so much easier, and being able to see it in that way, it's really easily digestible. What was I expecting? What was my actual flow rate? When during the night did that happen? What else was on at that time? And that's essential information to a lot of water managers.
And the thing that I love about it is it gives us the ability to analyze a stuck valve, right? If all of a sudden the usage doubles, a new station turns on and the usage doubles, that means the old station didn't turn off, right? The controller stopped delivering electricity to it. It thought that it shut that station down, but all of a sudden the next station gets a station high flow alert. Well, with the old type of reporting, we couldn't see what ran before. With this type of reporting, it gives us the details that we can drill down into and find issues very quickly.
Yeah, before with a stuck valve, that was going to be a hard thing to pinpoint. Well, which one is the culprit? But here, very quickly, we're going to see, I see where the high flow is at. I see when I get that alert, what's on. I know where my stuck valve is.
Absolutely. All right, Scott, that is the end of content, the end of scheduled content, and we are running thin on time here, but I do ask all of my guests before they leave, what does WeatherTRAK save you?
Yeah, for me, it saves headaches. I don't have as many headaches. When I have a WeatherTRAK system that's in place and I've got contractors that are embracing the WeatherTRAK technology, I'm just not going to have as many headaches that I do with the old technology, where there's miscommunication between the site manager and the water manager. A lot of that miscommunication, those headaches, they go away. Or from controllers that just don't manage water very well, that's a headache for me. I have to have conversations that I don't want to have about mismanagement. All of those headaches for me, they go away. So it saves me headaches.
That's great. Great answer. And let's see. I have one last thing I got to do to wrap this guy up. I go back to the PowerPoint. Oh, we've already integrated the central demonstrations throughout. And so next week, make sure to tune in. I have an exciting new topic for next week where I'm calling it WeatherTRAK User Development and Support Tools. We're going to really take time to go through all of the different types of support that WeatherTRAK provides, right? We have our full support team and the online resources and a million different ways that we try and support you. I want to take a few minutes and step back and break that down a little bit. Instead of 30 seconds at the end, we'll talk about all of those resources that you as WeatherTRAK water managers have available to you, and hopefully open your eyes to some new resources that you might not know about. So we will be going there next week. In the meantime, thank you all for tuning in this week. I appreciate your continued support, and I will toss it over to Scott to close us out.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk about a topic that doesn't always come up, but when you dig down into those usage reports, I think they're really nice management tools. And again, they help create really good conversations, relevant conversations, and you feel empowered as a water manager that you can talk about what's actually happening. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get maybe some marital advice on next week's webinar. We'll see. Or is this
Yeah,
might have been a
maybe you're
one-off?
starting a trend.
Okay, we'll
And
see.
on behalf of the whole HydroPoint team, Scott, thanks for your time and your continued support. You're a champion in your market and one of my favorite people to have on the show. So thanks, and go Broncos.
No. Raiders.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye-bye.